Picture this, January 7th, 1943. Room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker. An elderly man lies dead on his bed, surrounded by pigeons flying freely through open windows. His body won't be claimed for weeks. He owes the hotel thousands of dollars. He dies alone, forgotten, with nothing to his name. This man is Nikola Tesla. And here's the thing that will blow your mind. This same man created the technology that powers literally everything around you right now. Every light in your house, every motor, every piece of electrical infrastructure in the modern world exists because of him. So how does a genius of this magnitude die broken alone? That's the question we're going to answer today, and I promise you, this story is more dramatic, more tragic, and more unbelievable than any Hollywood movie. Let me take you back to where it all began. July 10th, 1856. A small village called Smiljan in what's now Croatia, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Legend says Nikola Tesla was born during a violent lightning storm, with lightning flashing across the sky at the exact moment of his birth. The midwife apparently called it a bad omen, saying he would be a child of darkness. His mother replied, "No, he will be a child of light." Whether that story is entirely true or embellished over time doesn't matter. What matters is the poetic irony. This child, born during an electrical storm, would grow up to master electricity itself. Tesla's family was extraordinary. His father, Milutin, was a Serbian Orthodox priest, a brilliant man who spoke multiple languages and possessed an incredible memory. He trained young Nikola relentlessly, pushing him to develop mental abilities that would later seem almost superhuman. But it was his mother, Georgina, who Tesla credited as his true inspiration. Here's what makes this fascinating. His mother had no formal education whatsoever. She couldn't read or write, but she possessed an incredible mechanical mind. She invented household tools and devices with her bare hands, including a mechanical egg beater that she constructed herself. Tesla would later write in his autobiography that everything he became, all his inventive genius, came directly from his mother's genetic inheritance. He worshipped her intelligence and credited her as the source of his abilities. Now, when Tesla was 12 years old, something happened that changed the entire trajectory of his life. He contracted cholera, and we're not talking about a mild case. This was a severe, life-threatening illness that left him bedridden for 9 months. For 9 months, young Nikola lay in bed, hovering between life and death, experiencing vivid hallucinations and fever dreams. His father, who had always intended for Nikola to enter the priesthood as family tradition dictated, sat at his bedside watching his son suffer. In a moment of desperation, his father made a promise. He told Nikola, "If you survive this, I will let you study engineering instead of becoming a priest." Tesla survived, and that promise became the turning point that determined everything that followed. If Tesla had died of cholera at 12, or if he had been forced into the priesthood, the modern world as we know it would not exist. But even as a child, before the cholera, Tesla was displaying abilities that seemed almost supernatural. By age 14, he was famous throughout his region as an exceptional scholar. When he attended the Higher Real Gymnasium in Karlovac, his teachers were initially convinced he was cheating. Why? Because Tesla could perform complex integral calculus entirely in his head. Problems that required other students hours of written work, Tesla solved mentally in seconds. His teachers would give him problems they thought impossible, and he'd deliver answers instantly. They couldn't understand how a human mind could work that way. He completed a 4-year program in 3 years, graduating in 1873 at the top of his class. But this wasn't just normal intelligence. Even then, Tesla was experiencing something unusual. He described having incredibly vivid visualizations, so intense they were almost like hallucinations. He could see complete mechanical devices in his mind, rotate them, examine them from every angle, and test them mentally before ever building them physically. In 1875, Tesla enrolled at the Imperial Royal Technical College in Graz, Austria, on a prestigious military frontier scholarship. His first year was absolutely spectacular. He passed 9 exams, nearly double the required number. His dean wrote to his father saying, "Your son is a star of first rank." Everything pointed to a brilliant academic career. It was at Graz that Tesla became obsessed with the problem that would define his life. During lectures on electricity, his professor demonstrated alternating current systems, and Tesla became fascinated. He started seeing in his mind how electrical motors could work more efficiently, how they could operate without the mechanical switches that caused constant sparking and required endless maintenance. His mind was working on revolutionary concepts, but he couldn't yet fully formulate them. Then something went terribly wrong. By his third year, Tesla's academic performance collapsed completely. He went from being a star student to failing courses. Historians still debate exactly what happened. Some suggest he became addicted to gambling and pursued romantic interests that distracted him. Others point to evidence of severe obsessive-compulsive disorder, chronic insomnia, and possible autism spectrum traits that went completely untreated. Biographer Mark Cypher suggests Tesla was experiencing significant mental health symptoms that interfered with his ability to complete academic work. Whatever the cause, by December 1878, Tesla had left Graz without graduating. Here we see the first appearance of a pattern that would define his entire life. Brilliant insights coupled with an inability to follow through with conventional institutional structures. Tesla returned home to Gospic, where his father tried to help him recover and restart his life. But on April 17, 1879, his father died unexpectedly at age 60. Tesla was devastated. He lost the one person who had believed in him enough to break family tradition and allow him to pursue engineering. The loss came at exactly the wrong time, when Tesla needed stability and support most. In 1880, Tesla briefly attempted to attend Charles University in Prague to restart his formal education, but he abandoned these efforts without completing any degree program. Tesla never obtained a formal university degree, despite his extraordinary intellectual gifts. This pattern of generating revolutionary ideas but failing to execute them through the expected institutional pathways would characterize his entire life. After leaving Prague, Tesla accepted a position in Budapest beginning in 1881, working at the city's Central Telegraph Office. It wasn't prestigious academic work, but it was practical engineering experience with electrical systems. And it was in Budapest that something extraordinary happened, something Tesla would describe for the rest of his life as the moment when everything changed. It was 1882. Tesla was walking in a Budapest park with his friend and colleague, Anidal Sigathi. They were talking, walking, enjoying the afternoon. Suddenly, Tesla stopped mid-stride. His eyes went wide. He started trembling. Sigathi later described Tesla as appearing almost possessed or in a trance. Tesla pulled a stick from the ground and, right there in the dirt, frantically began sketching diagrams while speaking rapidly to his bewildered companion. What Tesla was experiencing was a complete, vivid visualization of the rotating magnetic field motor principle. This concept had eluded electrical engineers for years. The problem was this: how do you create an electrical motor that doesn't require mechanical switches to constantly flip the direction of current? These switches, called commutators, were the weakness of every motor. They sparked constantly, required endless maintenance, and limited efficiency. But in that moment in the Budapest park, Tesla saw the complete solution fully formed in his mind. He saw how alternating current could create a rotating magnetic field that would turn a rotor without any mechanical switching whatsoever. He saw the entire design, complete and perfect as if it had been handed to him by some external force. He described this experience as a kind of hallucinatory breakthrough, a vision so vivid and overwhelming that it felt more real than reality itself. This is crucial to understanding Tesla. His greatest inventions came to him not through careful, methodical experimentation, but through these intense visualizations that bordered on hallucination. He would later write extensively about his ability to construct entire devices completely in his mind, test them mentally, identify problems, fix them, and perfect them before ever building a physical prototype. This wasn't normal creative thinking. This was something different, something that combined elements of eidetic visual memory with hallucinatory intensity. Modern psychologists might recognize this as a form of immersive mental simulation amplified to an almost pathological degree. But whether it was genius or madness or some combination of both, it worked. That vision in the Budapest park became the alternating current induction motor, the invention that would revolutionize electrical engineering and ultimately power the entire industrialized world. From 1882 to 1884, Tesla continued working for Edison's telephone company in Budapest and later Paris, refining his motor concepts through practical engineering experience. He knew he had something revolutionary, but he needed resources to develop it. In June 1884, Tesla made the decision that would change his life. He immigrated to the United States. He arrived in Manhattan with approximately 4 cents in his pocket. Why only 4 cents? Because during the voyage, thieves had stolen his possessions during a mutiny aboard the ship. He landed in America with essentially no money, no family connections, limited English, and no prospects. But inside his mind, he carried complete designs for revolutionary motors and systems that would ultimately transform global electrical infrastructure. Almost immediately upon arrival in New York, Tesla met Thomas Alva Edison, the most famous and celebrated inventor of the era and the dominant figure in American electrical engineering. Edison, recognizing Tesla's talent, offered him a position as an electrical engineer at the Edison Machine Works on Manhattan's Lower East Side. For Tesla, who had arrived with 4 cents, this was his chance. Edison assigned Tesla an ambitious challenge: improve the company's DC generators to produce cleaner, more efficient direct current power with reduced energy losses. And here's where the story gets interesting. Edison allegedly offered Tesla $50,000 for successful improvements. Let me put that in perspective. $50,000 in 1884 is equivalent to approximately $1.5 million in today's money. For Tesla, who had arrived in America with 4 cents, this promised payment represented life-changing wealth. Tesla threw himself into the work with characteristic obsessive intensity. He worked insane hours, often sleeping only 2 hours per night, redesigning Edison's entire generator system. He worked for over 6 months with laser-focused dedication. Finally, he completed his improvements and proudly requested his promised $50,000 payment. Edison's response would haunt Tesla for the rest of his life. According to Tesla's account, Edison replied, "Tesla, you don't understand American humor." He was implying that the promise had been a joke, a test of Tesla's gullibility. Other versions of the story have Edison directly denying he had ever offered such a sum. Now, historians debate whether this story is entirely accurate. $50,000 was an enormous amount, and some scholars question whether Edison Machine Works actually had that kind of cash available for a single bonus payment. But the core of the story is verified. Tesla did work intensely on improving DC generators. Edison did fail to provide the promised compensation, and this broken promise became the defining betrayal of Tesla's early life. This moment wasn't just a financial disappointment, it became the psychological fuel that would power decades of rivalry. Tesla internalized this incident as evidence of Edison's dishonesty and malice, and he dedicated himself to proving that Edison's technological approach, direct current power systems, was fundamentally inferior to his own alternating current systems. The broken promise became the wound that never healed, the injustice that shaped his entire professional narrative. Enraged and demoralized, Tesla resigned from Edison Machine Works after only 6 months. But now he had a problem. No job, no income, no prospects. For the next 2 years, from 1885 to 1886, Tesla survived by working as a manual laborer, digging ditches for $2 per day. Think about that. A man with revolutionary designs in his head, a man who could mentally construct and test entire electrical systems, was reduced to digging ditches for $2 a day. He lived in boarding houses, often unable to afford basic meals, sleeping in workers' lodgings, experiencing genuine poverty in 1880s New York. This 2-year period of humiliation and manual labor became a defining psychological experience. Tesla never forgot the injury of Edison's betrayal, nor the humiliation of digging ditches while his intellect burned with ideas he couldn't yet realize. These experiences hardened him into a man who was simultaneously brilliant yet profoundly damaged by early professional injustice. He became bitter, paranoid about being cheated, and intensely protective of his intellectual property. The wound Edison had inflicted would never fully heal. In 1886, Tesla's luck shifted when he met 2 investors, Alfred S. Brown and Charles F. Peck. These men recognized potential in the desperate but brilliant engineer. Rather than simply hiring Tesla as an employee, they proposed a partnership. They would establish a company, provide capital and business management, and give Tesla laboratory space and resources to develop his inventions. The profits would be shared. This arrangement, while giving Tesla less control than he would have preferred, finally provided him with what he desperately needed: resources and legitimacy. In April 1887, they officially incorporated the Tesla Electric Company in Manhattan. For the first time since leaving Budapest, Tesla had the stability and resources necessary to transform his mental designs into physical reality. In 1887, working in his new laboratory, Tesla developed the polyphase induction motor using the rotating magnetic field principle he had visualized in that Budapest park 5 years earlier. This motor was revolutionary. Unlike previous motors that required complex commutators, mechanical switches that constantly switched the direction of current and produced troublesome sparks, Tesla's AC induction motor operated through the elegant principle of the rotating magnetic field. It required no commutators. It was self-starting. It could run indefinitely at precise, constant speeds with minimal maintenance. The motor was a triumph of elegant engineering based on deep understanding of electromagnetic principles. In the spring of 1888, Tesla's designs were patented, receiving multiple patents including Patent 381,968 and related variants that comprehensively protected his AC motor technology. This comprehensive patent portfolio provided powerful legal protection and demonstrated the scope of his innovations to potential investors and business partners. Within months of obtaining these patents, Tesla's life changed dramatically when George Westinghouse, the renowned electrical engineer and industrialist, discovered Tesla's patents and immediately recognized their revolutionary potential. Westinghouse had been experimenting with AC power systems as an alternative to Edison's dominant DC system, and he understood that Tesla's motor design could be the missing piece that would make AC power distribution economically superior to Edison's approach. In July 1888, Westinghouse and Tesla reached a historic business agreement. Westinghouse's company would license Tesla's AC motor patents for $60,000 in cash and stock, and Tesla would be hired as a consultant at $2,000 per month to help develop a complete AC power distribution system. Additionally, Tesla would receive a royalty of $2.50 per AC horsepower produced. This agreement, while financially substantial by 1888 standards, represented far less than the true economic value of Tesla's patents would ultimately prove. But at that moment, it was transformative. It represented more wealth than Tesla had ever possessed or imagined. It legitimized AC technology as a viable alternative to Edison's DC system. It provided Tesla with the financial resources and institutional backing necessary to develop his systems at scale. Perhaps most importantly, it positioned Tesla as the inventor of the future against Edison's technology of the past. With Westinghouse's financial backing and Tesla's revolutionary AC motor technology, the intensity of what became known as the War of Currents escalated dramatically. This wasn't a polite technical debate conducted in scientific journals. This was a brutal, public, sensational propaganda war between two competing economic systems: Edison's direct current and Westinghouse's and Tesla's alternating current. Edison, who had invested a personal fortune in DC infrastructure and held valuable DC patents, launched an extraordinarily aggressive propaganda campaign to discredit AC power. He claimed it was inherently more dangerous than DC and therefore unsuitable for powering cities and homes. But Edison didn't just make technical arguments. His campaign relied on theatrical and emotionally manipulative tactics designed to frighten the public about AC power. Edison's most extreme tactic was conducting public demonstrations, where he electrocuted stray animals using AC current to demonstrate what he characterized as AC's unique lethality. He electrocuted dogs, cats, horses, and cattle in public exhibitions, claiming this proved AC was too dangerous for residential use. Most infamously, in 1903, Edison arranged for the public electrocution of Topsy, a beloved circus elephant, using AC current at Luna Park in Coney Island, New York. The event was filmed and widely publicized. The electrocution of Topsy remains one of the most notorious examples of animal cruelty in the name of business propaganda Edison also famously promoted the electric chair powered by AC current as an execution method, even coining the term Westinghouse to describe death by electrocution. It was an attempt to associate AC power with death itself in the public imagination. Despite Edison's relentless, expensive, and emotionally manipulative smear campaign, the technical and economic advantages of AC power proved insurmountable. AC's fundamental advantage was transformability. Using transformers, AC voltage could be stepped up to very high voltages for transmission over long distances with minimal power loss, then stepped down to usable voltages at local distribution points. This meant that AC power generated at one location could be transmitted efficiently hundreds of miles away. This was impossible with Edison's DC system, which could only be transmitted effectively about 1 mile before requiring regeneration. To power a city with DC would require a power plant every mile or so, making it economically impractical for anything beyond small, dense urban areas. The decisive turning point came in 1893 when Westinghouse and Tesla won the contract to electrify the world's Columbian Exposition, the Chicago World's Fair, for approximately $399,000. They dramatically underbid General Electric's DC proposal of $554,000. The fair's successful illumination of approximately 100,000 light bulbs using AC power, witnessed by nearly 28 million visitors during the spring season of 1893, provided definitive, visible, undeniable public proof of AC's safety and practical effectiveness. The fair was a sensation. The White City, as it was called, blazed with electrical light powered entirely by alternating current. There were no significant electrical accidents. No one was electrocuted. The lights worked flawlessly. Edison's claims about AC's inherent danger were publicly disproven by the most spectacular electrical demonstration the world had ever seen. The spectacle of the White City illuminated by AC power became the iconic image representing the future of electrical power, and it was Tesla's and Westinghouse's future, not Edison's. By 1892, even Edison himself recognized he had lost the technological war. Facing financial losses and mounting patent litigation, Edison merged his company with Thomson Houston to form General Electric, a more AC-friendly organization that quickly abandoned his DC system focus. The war of currents was over. AC had won. Edison's technological dream had been superseded by Tesla's superior system. In 1893, simultaneously with their World's Fair triumph, Westinghouse and Tesla received the most significant endorsement of their system. The Niagara Falls Power Company awarded Westinghouse the contract to design, construct, and operate the first major hydroelectric power generation and transmission facility in North America. Now, here's a critical detail that's often gotten wrong. Tesla advised the Niagara Falls Power Company that a two-phase AC system, not three-phase as sometimes incorrectly stated, would be the most reliable and proven approach for generating and transmitting power from the falls. Engineer Edward Dean Adams consulted with Tesla specifically on the optimal system design, and Tesla recommended the two-phase configuration, which was the most thoroughly tested and reliable system at that time. Construction of the Niagara Falls facility began in 1895, and the system became operational, successfully generating power from the falls using Tesla's two-phase AC technology. The power generated at Niagara Falls was successfully transmitted over distance to Buffalo and other communities, proving the practical feasibility and economic viability of long-distance AC power transmission. This was exactly what Tesla had envisioned and exactly what Edison had claimed was impossible. The success of the Niagara Falls hydroelectric facility represented the historical vindication of Tesla's vision. AC power could transmit electrical power efficiently over vast distances, making it possible to locate power generation at optimal sites and transmit that power to distant cities. This fundamental technical advantage of AC over DC shaped the electrical infrastructure of the entire world for the next 150 years and continues to remain the basis of electrical transmission today. While developing the AC system with Westinghouse, Tesla was simultaneously pursuing another revolutionary avenue of research: wireless transmission of signals and power. In 1891, Tesla developed the Tesla coil, receiving patent 454,622 for a high-voltage resonant transformer circuit capable of producing extremely high-frequency alternating current, thousands to millions of cycles per second. The Tesla coil became foundational to radio technology development and remains used today in radio transmitters, radar systems, neon and fluorescent lighting, and educational demonstrations of electromagnetic principles. On July 30, 1891, Tesla became a naturalized U.S. citizen at age 35, formally committing himself to America as his permanent home. In 1889, Tesla had attended the Paris Exposition Universelle, the World's Fair, where he encountered scientific presentations on Heinrich Hertz's groundbreaking experiments on electromagnetic radiation and radio waves. These presentations energized Tesla's imagination about wireless transmission possibilities and convinced him that his theoretical work on wireless systems could be practically implemented. Beginning in the 1890s, Tesla conducted dramatic demonstrations where he wirelessly illuminated bulbs from a distance across an exhibition stage, with no visible wires connecting the bulbs to the power source. He used the Tesla coil to generate high-frequency AC that could be transmitted through the air and received by the distant bulbs. These demonstrations generated public astonishment and fascination. Audiences struggled to understand how electricity could flow through empty air. Tesla publicly claimed that his system could eventually transmit intelligible signals or perhaps even power to any distance without the use of wires by conducting signals through the Earth itself. In 1893, Tesla made formal public pronouncements about wireless communication at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia and at meetings of the National Electric Light Association, stating his certainty that wireless signal transmission through Earth conductance was not merely theoretically possible but practically achievable. Between 1892 and 1894, Tesla also served as vice president of the American Institute of Electrical Engineers, providing him with institutional prestige and access to the engineering community's leading minds. During this period, he visited Europe, delivering lectures in London and Paris about AC power advantages and wireless transmission concepts, establishing himself as an international scientific figure. In 1898, Tesla achieved an extraordinary public demonstration. He built a wireless remote-controlled boat, which he called a telautomaton, and publicly demonstrated it at Madison Square Garden in New York during an electrical exhibition. The boat responded to wireless commands transmitted through the air, moving forward, backward, and turning in response to Tesla's radio control. The audience was astonished. Many thought it was magic or trickery. They couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. This device represented arguably the world's first practical wireless remote-controlled mechanism, an invention that was decades ahead of its time. Remote-controlled toys and television remotes wouldn't become mainstream consumer products until the 1960s. Over 60 years later, Tesla had invented the technology, but the world wasn't ready for it yet. The successes of Tesla's wireless experiments and his growing reputation led to what would be one of the most extraordinary scientific endeavors of the era, the Tesla Experimental Station in Colorado Springs. In May 1899, Tesla established this experimental laboratory at an elevation of over 6,000 feet in Colorado Springs, Colorado. He specifically chose this location for its frequent thunderstorms, which he believed ideal for conducting high-frequency and high-voltage experiments in an environment with natural lightning phenomena to study. For 9 months, from May 1899 to January 1900, Tesla conducted extraordinary experiments generating artificial lightning and measuring terrestrial electrical phenomena on a scale never before attempted. During these experiments, Tesla created artificial lightning that reached up to 135 feet high, with thunder audible 15 miles away. Locals in Colorado Springs were bewildered by the apparent natural phenomenon that was actually being generated by Tesla's equipment. He built a Tesla coil nearly 50 feet in diameter, the largest in history. At that time, electricity was visible arcing and crackling through the evening air around his facility, creating an otherworldly landscape of electromagnetic discharge. It must have looked like something from another world, like Tesla had torn open a hole in reality itself and was manipulating the fundamental forces of nature. More significantly than these spectacular demonstrations, Tesla documented in detailed daily diaries his investigations into terrestrial stationary waves, oscillating electromagnetic patterns that could exist within the Earth itself. He was proving through his experiments that the Earth itself could function as an electrical conductor and resonant circuit. This theoretical work laid groundwork for wireless transmission using the Earth as the medium. During these Colorado Springs experiments in December 1899, Tesla observed what he believed were unusual electromagnetic signals. He mentioned them in a letter to a reporter, speculating they might be signals from other planets or intelligences. Later, in a February 9, 1901 article in Collier's Weekly titled "Talking with Planets," Tesla expanded on these claims. However, historians and scientists have since concluded that Tesla likely received and misinterpreted atmospheric phenomena, electrical reflections, or his own equipment's artifacts rather than genuine extraterrestrial signals. While Tesla genuinely believed he was receiving signals from other worlds, the scientific consensus is that this represented experimental error or misinterpretation rather than actual receipt of extraterrestrial communication. Tesla also conducted pioneering experiments with X-rays during 1894 to 1896, producing images of his own hand bones and other X-ray photographs that may have actually predated Wilhelm Röntgen's December 1895 announcement by weeks. However, Tesla did not publish or systematically defend these findings through patents, and a mysterious fire at his laboratory destroyed crucial notes and evidence of his X-ray work. Notably, Tesla took significant precautions regarding radiation exposure and avoided prolonged contact with X-rays, caution that likely saved his life compared to Röntgen and other early X-ray researchers who developed serious radiation poisoning and health problems from unprotected exposure. Upon returning to New York in early 1900, following his Colorado Springs experiments, Tesla conceived of what would become his most ambitious project and ultimately his greatest failure, the Wardenclyffe Tower, a colossal wireless transmission station on Long Island designed as the prototype node of a worldwide wireless communications and power transmission system. Tesla's vision was genuinely grandiose and scientifically compelling, if not ultimately practical. He believed that by establishing a network of massive resonant transmission towers around the world, he could transmit both wireless communications, messages, reports, news, music, and electrical power wirelessly to any location on Earth without wires. Furthermore, Tesla believed this system should provide free electrical power to all humanity, a utopian vision that aligned with his genuine belief that invention and technology should serve human welfare rather than generate private profit. To realize this vision, Tesla approached the most powerful financier of the era, J.P. Morgan. One of America's wealthiest men and a prominent patron of science and technology, Morgan had invested in various scientific and technological endeavors and was open to funding innovative projects that might generate returns. Tesla, despite his profound scientific genius, proved to be a masterful salesman when motivated by his vision. He convinced Morgan that the system would transmit wireless communications globally, messages, reports, news, music, and that such a system would generate substantial profits through transmission fees and service revenue. Morgan, envisioning a profitable worldwide communications monopoly, agreed to invest. In March 1901, Morgan committed $150,000 to the project, an enormous sum at the time, equivalent to approximately $4.7 million in today's money. Construction began immediately on Wardenclyffe, located in Shoreham, Long Island, 100 miles east of Manhattan on the North Shore. The facility featured a 187-foot-tall steel lattice tower structure topped with a large spherical terminal approximately 67 feet in diameter, specifically designed to ionize the atmosphere and create a conductive path for wireless transmission. It was an engineering marvel, a structure unlike anything else in the world. When complete, it would be Tesla's masterpiece. However, a fundamental and ultimately catastrophic disagreement emerged regarding the project's true purpose and scope. Tesla had sold Morgan on wireless communication, transmitting messages globally, leading Morgan to envision revenue generation through transmission services. But once construction began and funding was committed, Tesla began pivoting toward his true vision: wireless power transmission, transmitting electrical energy itself wirelessly without wires. This was far more ambitious, technically uncertain, economically problematic, and, in Tesla's formulation, designed to provide free power to humanity rather than generate revenue. This pivot horrified Morgan for entirely logical business reasons. While wireless communication could generate revenue through transmission fees and licensing, wireless power transmission would be extraordinarily difficult to monetize if Tesla's stated goal was providing free power to everyone. How do you charge people for power that comes from the air itself? How do you control access? How do you generate profit from a system designed to give power away for free? Morgan couldn't answer these questions, and neither could Tesla. Moreover, the project was consuming far more capital than initially projected. Construction costs were escalating as Tesla demanded modifications and expensive materials. The completion date kept receding into the future. And then, in December 1901, disaster struck from an unexpected direction. Tesla's Italian competitor, Guglielmo Marconi, achieved the first successful transatlantic radio transmission, sending the letter S in Morse code from Cornwall, England to Newfoundland, Canada. Marconi was using some of Tesla's own patents in his equipment, but he accomplished the transmission at a fraction of the cost and with far less elaborate infrastructure than Tesla's vision. Marconi's successful transatlantic transmission, accomplished while Tesla's Wardenclyffe facility was still under construction, devastated Tesla's financial argument to Morgan. It demonstrated that wireless communication, the primary justification Morgan had accepted for funding, could be achieved without Tesla's massive and expensive infrastructure. Morgan's confidence in the project eroded rapidly. By 1903, in growing desperation, Tesla wrote repeatedly to Morgan begging for additional capital to complete the facility. He wrote emotional letters explaining that the system would advance civilization, provide benefits to all humanity, and represent a technological leap forward of historic proportions. Morgan's response, in a letter dated July 14, 1903, was unambiguous and devastating. I have received your letter and in reply would say that I should not feel disposed at present to make any further advances. 9 words, that's all it took to destroy Tesla's dream. Morgan, having lost confidence in the project and never convinced that wireless power transmission was achievable or economically viable, refused to provide additional capital, not one more dollar, ever. Tesla's response was more emotional letters and appeals claiming that Morgan's withdrawal would prevent him from advancing the world a century and realizing the utopian vision of free worldwide power. But Morgan remained unmoved. The financier would not provide another dollar. The project's collapse was swift, total, and catastrophic for Tesla personally. Between 1903 and 1905, Tesla's financial situation deteriorated from merely difficult to completely disastrous. Most crucially, in May 1905, Tesla's foundational patents on AC motors and AC power transmission expired after their standard 17-year patent term. This expiration meant the termination of all royalty payments from Westinghouse, the reliable stream of income that had sustained him for 17 years. These royalties had been his primary income source, and their cessation meant losing his financial lifeline precisely when his Wardenclyffe project was consuming capital and producing nothing. Additionally, the stock market panic of 1907 devastated potential sources of capital, making it essentially impossible for Tesla to attract new investors even if he had the credibility to do so. Around 1906, amid these cascading financial crises, Tesla experienced what biographers suspect was a severe nervous breakdown. Multiple concurrent catastrophes compounded the crisis. His chief manager, George Scherf, was forced to leave for other employment. Stanford White, the renowned architect who had designed the Wardenclyffe Tower, was murdered in a sensational crime. Investor William Rankine died suddenly. The coincidence of these personal and professional catastrophes may have triggered psychological collapse in Tesla. The Wardenclyffe facility was abandoned around 1911, with its main building vandalized and rapidly deteriorating as Tesla lacked the funds to maintain it. As debts accumulated, Tesla attempted to maintain credit with various New York hotels, where he maintained laboratory spaces and lived, accumulating substantial unpaid bills. By 1915, his accumulated debt at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, where he had maintained a laboratory and residence, reached approximately $20,000, equivalent to approximately $622,000 in today's money. The Wardenclyffe facility's final fate was disposal. George Bolt, the proprietor of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel to whom Tesla owed $20,000, obtained a mortgage on the Wardenclyffe property. When Tesla could not pay his debts, Bolt foreclosed and arranged for the demolition of the tower in 1917 to recover scrap metal value and clear the property. A persistent rumor circulated during World War I that the U.S. government had ordered the demolition of Wardenclyffe Tower, fearing German spies were using it for transmissions or military purposes. This exciting alternate narrative of the tower being destroyed by government order rather than creditor foreclosure became widespread in popular accounts. But the true reason for demolition was Tesla's unpayable personal debts and Bolt's legitimate business foreclosure. The suppression of this truth and the circulation of the more dramatic government conspiracy narrative actually added to Tesla's mystique but compounded his humiliation by concealing the reality of his financial desperation. The Wardenclyffe Tower's demolition became the symbolic end of Tesla's grand vision, the physical destruction of the most concrete manifestation of his dream of worldwide wireless power and communication. From 1917 until his death in 1943, Tesla lived a progressively more isolated and impoverished existence, residing in a succession of New York City hotels as his financial situation deteriorated and his mental state became increasingly eccentric. His hotel residences during this period included the Waldorf Astoria, from which he moved in 1922, the St. Regis Hotel, from which he was evicted in 1923 due to repeated complaints about pigeons in the Hotel Pennsylvania until 1930, the Hotel Governor Clinton until 1934, and finally the Hotel New Yorker beginning in 1934, where he would live until his death. Throughout this period, Tesla had no steady employment income and survived on occasional consulting fees, accumulated hotel credit that he paid sporadically or not at all, and the charity of friends. His laboratory equipment, papers, and possessions were periodically sold or auctioned off to satisfy hotel debts and basic expenses. Here's a detail often overlooked in Tesla biographies. Beginning around 1934, the year he moved to the Hotel New Yorker, Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company began paying Tesla $125 per month, ostensibly as a consulting fee or settlement, though it functioned as a modest stipend that kept him from complete destitution. Some biographies describe this as a tacit admission by Westinghouse that Tesla deserved ongoing recognition and support. Others describe it as a charitable arrangement to prevent Tesla from becoming entirely destitute and becoming a public relations liability to Westinghouse. Regardless of motivation, this $125 monthly payment, approximately equivalent to $2,300 in today's money, provided Tesla with minimal but crucial survival income during his final decade. During his final decades in these hotels, Tesla's personality became increasingly eccentric, and his mental health deteriorated noticeably, with symptoms consistent with severe obsessive-compulsive disorder that intensified with age and isolation. His compulsive behaviors included obsessions with the number 3. He would demand room numbers divisible by 3. He developed extreme germophobia and ritualistic hand-washing. He engaged in compulsive counting and walking rituals, walking around a building precisely 3 times before entering. He developed ritualistic eating patterns where he counted his jaw movements and only consumed food after mentally calculating its exact volume. He refused to shake hands with people, wearing gloves instead. He avoided contact with hair and disease vectors. He became increasingly isolated from human social contact. He washed his hands repeatedly throughout the day until they became raw and chapped, and insisted that all his food be thoroughly cooked after he had observed bacteria through a microscope, terrifying him with awareness of invisible microbial contamination. Most strikingly and poignantly, Tesla developed an extraordinary emotional attachment to pigeons in New York's parks, particularly a specific white pigeon whom he claimed to love, as a man loves a woman. He spent hours daily in park spaces, particularly around what is now Bryant Park at 45th and 6th Avenue in Manhattan, now marked with a plaque as Nikola Tesla Corner, feeding pigeons, taking injured pigeons back to his hotel room to nurse them back to health, and keeping his hotel windows perpetually open so pigeons could freely enter his room, much to the hotel management's dismay and the distress of other guests. Tesla reportedly spent over $2,000, equivalent to approximately $37,570 in today's money, on caring for his beloved white pigeon, including constructing a specialized device to support her broken wing and leg while they healed from injuries. He documented her life, sketched her, photographed her, and spoke of her with the emotional intensity that should have been reserved for human relationships. The pigeon obsession reveals the profound emotional toll that Tesla's decades of isolation, celibacy, and rejection took on his psychology. Having deliberately avoided human intimacy and romantic relationships throughout his adulthood, claiming they would interfere with his work, Tesla transferred all his emotional needs and capacity for love onto pigeons, birds that could not reject him, demand attention in ways he couldn't manage, or require the emotional reciprocity that human relationships necessitated. The pigeon became an emotional surrogate for human companionship that Tesla's psychological damage prevented him from seeking or maintaining. Here's what makes this so devastating. Tesla had chosen this isolation. He had deliberately avoided romantic relationships, marriage, and family. He had famously stated that these human connections would interfere with his work, that invention required absolute dedication and focus, and for decades, that choice seemed justified by his achievements. But now, in his final years, the cost of that choice became visible. He was alone, completely alone, and the only beings he could connect with emotionally were pigeons. During his final decades, Tesla also made increasingly grandiose and unsubstantiated claims about secret inventions he claimed to be developing, including a death ray, a directed energy weapon, and a machine capable of creating earthquakes powerful enough to topple skyscrapers. In 1936, when marking his 80th birthday, Tesla publicly announced these weapons to crowds and press, gave interviews describing their terrible power, and claimed to have perfected them, but produced no evidence, no prototypes, no demonstrations, and no technological documentation of these claimed devices. Historians attribute these grandiose claims to progressive mental deterioration, possible dementia, and Tesla's desperate desire to remain scientifically relevant in his final decades, rather than to actual technological developments. These claims significantly damaged his remaining credibility among the scientific community and contributed to the popular perception of Tesla as a brilliant but eccentric or even mentally unstable figure. Remarkably, even amid poverty and decline, Tesla received some limited recognition in his later years. In 1931, journalist Kenneth M. Sweezy organized a celebration for Tesla's 75th birthday, where Tesla received congratulations from numerous figures including Albert Einstein and was featured on the cover of Time magazine, a recognition of his enduring historical importance despite his contemporary poverty and obscurity. In 1936, Tesla's native Yugoslavia held a ceremony in Zagreb celebrating his 80th birthday, with Yugoslav leaders sending congratulatory messages, some recognition of his international significance, though this brought no financial benefit. But these were brief moments of light in what had become a very dark existence. In 1922, something happened that, in retrospect, marked the emotional end of Tesla's life, even though he would live physically for another 21 years. Tesla's beloved white pigeon, the bird he had spent thousands of dollars caring for, the creature he claimed to love as a man loves a woman, flew into his hotel room window. Tesla later described this moment with an intensity that reveals just how much this bird meant to him. He said the pigeon came to tell him she was dying. She came to say goodbye. And as she lay dying, Tesla reported that a brilliant white light shone from her eyes, a light so bright and intense that it was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Whether this light was real or a hallucination born of grief and sleep deprivation, we'll never know. But what matters is what Tesla believed. He believed that at the moment of his pigeon's death, at the moment that light shone from her eyes, he received a message. His life's work was finished. Everything he had been meant to accomplish was complete. There was nothing left for him to do. From that moment in 1922 until his death in 1943, Tesla was essentially a ghost, a living remnant of what he had once been. He continued his daily routines, feeding the other pigeons, living in his hotel rooms, making occasional pronouncements about inventions that would never materialize. But the fire was gone. The driving obsession that had powered his entire life, the need to invent, to create, to transform the world, had died with that white pigeon. On January 6, 1943, Tesla, now 86 years old and in declining health, was struck by a taxi while crossing a Manhattan street. The accident severely wrenched his back and fractured 3 of his ribs. These were serious injuries at any age, but particularly dangerous for an elderly man. This final accident, coming after a lifetime of stress, obsessive work habits, and isolation, likely accelerated his physical decline. One day later, on January 7, 1943, at 10:45 p.m., hotel maid Alice Monahan discovered Tesla's body in room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker, where he had lived for the previous 9 years of his life. Assistant medical examiner H.W. Wembley examined the body and determined the cause of death as coronary thrombosis, a blockage of a coronary artery causing heart attack. Tesla had died alone, in debt, with his greatest ambitions unfulfilled. His body remained unclaimed in the hotel morgue for weeks while arrangements were made for his funeral. Think about that for a moment. The man who had powered the entire modern world, whose inventions were generating billions of dollars in economic value, whose AC system was literally keeping the lights on in every city in America, died so broke and so forgotten that his body sat unclaimed in a morgue for weeks because no one immediately knew what to do with it. Despite dying in obscurity and poverty, Tesla's funeral on January 12, 1943, at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in Manhattan was attended by approximately 2,000 people. 2,000 people came to honor a man who had died penniless and alone. That attendance was a testament to his significance and the public recognition of his historical importance, even after decades of decline and disappearance from public view. He was cremated at Ferncliff Cemetery in Ardsley, New York. But here's where the story takes one final, almost unbelievable turn. Just 6 months after Tesla's death in June 1943, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a decision that upheld a 1935 lower court ruling affirming Tesla's priority as the true inventor of radio, restoring his patent precedence over Guglielmo Marconi, and settling decades of bitter dispute in Tesla's favor. The Supreme Court's decision noted that Tesla's 1,900 patents, numbers 645,576 and 649,621, clearly preceded Marconi's contributions in establishing the foundational principles of radio transmission, though Marconi deserved credit for the first practical and commercially successful radio transmissions. The decision corrected the historical record. Tesla was legally recognized as the inventor of radio principle. Marconi was recognized as the developer of practical radio application. Historians have noted that the timing of the Supreme Court decision, coming just months after Tesla's death, was strategic as well as legal. The U.S. government was engaged in World War II and faced potentially enormous royalty payments to Marconi's company for wartime use of radio patents. Affirming Tesla's earlier patent priority allowed the government to avoid these royalties, making Tesla's vindication financially advantageous to the government's interests. Nevertheless, the Supreme Court's opinion definitively recognized Tesla's intellectual priority and corrected decades of popular misunderstanding. But here's the tragedy. This vindication arrived far too late to alter Tesla's life, restore his finances, or provide him personal recognition during his lifetime. The man who changed the world through his inventions died impoverished and in isolation, recognized posthumously only after his death made recognition emotionally meaningless to him. 6 months. If that Supreme Court decision had come 6 months earlier, Tesla would have lived to see it. He would have known that history had finally, officially, legally recognized him as the inventor of radio. But instead, he died believing that Marconi had stolen his glory, that the world had forgotten him, that his contributions had been erased. 6 months too late. So, let's talk about what actually happened here. Let's talk about the pattern of Tesla's life, because understanding this pattern is crucial to understanding why a genius died broke. Tesla invented the principles. Others commercialized them and profited. This happened again and again and again throughout his life. He invented the AC motor and power distribution system that literally powers the entire modern world. What did he get for it? $60,000 in royalties that lasted 17 years. The economic value generated by AC power in the decades since is measured in trillions of dollars. Trillions! And Tesla got $60,000 in 17 years of modest royalties. He invented the foundational principles of radio. Marconi turned it into a commercial product and became famous as the inventor of radio, winning the Nobel Prize in 1909, while Tesla dug himself deeper into debt with Wardenclyffe. He invented remote control technology in 1898. It didn't become commercially viable until the 1960s, decades after his death. He was always the pioneer, never the profiteer. But why? Why did this keep happening? The answer is complex, but it comes down to a few key factors. First, Tesla was a terrible businessman. He understood electricity, magnetism, and physics at a level that bordered on supernatural. But he didn't understand money, contracts, negotiation, or investor relations. When Westinghouse offered him $60,000 for patents that would generate billions in value, Tesla accepted because $60,000 seemed like an unimaginable fortune to a man who had been digging ditches for $2 a day just a few years earlier. He had no concept of the true economic value of what he had created. He didn't negotiate. He didn't demand a larger share. He just accepted the first offer because it seemed generous compared to his previous poverty. Second, Tesla was pursuing utopian visions in a capitalist world. He genuinely believed that technology should serve humanity rather than generate profit. When he told J.P. Morgan that Wardenclyffe would provide free power to everyone on Earth, he thought that was a selling point. He thought Morgan would be excited about advancing civilization and benefiting humanity. But Morgan was a capitalist. He wanted return on investment. He wanted profit. The fundamental misalignment between Tesla's utopian idealism and Morgan's capitalist pragmatism doomed Wardenclyffe from the start. Tesla couldn't understand why anyone wouldn't want to give free power to humanity. Morgan couldn't understand why anyone would invest in a system designed to give away for free the thing you're supposed to be selling. Third, Tesla was too far ahead of his time. His remote-controlled boat in 1898 anticipated technology that wouldn't be commercially viable for 60 years. His wireless power transmission concepts were based on principles that still aren't fully understood or practically implemented today, over a century later. His X-ray experiments preceded Röntgen's credited discovery but were lost before he could properly document and defend them. Being ahead of your time is romantic in retrospect, but it's catastrophic in practice. If you invent something the world isn't ready for, the world won't buy it, investors won't fund it, and you won't profit from it. Someone else will come along decades later, reinvent it when the world is ready, and get all the credit and profit. Fourth, Tesla's mental health issues affected his professional credibility and relationships. His OCD, his germophobia, his bizarre rituals, his increasingly eccentric behaviors, all of these things made people uncomfortable and damaged his ability to maintain professional relationships and attract investors. By his later years, when he was making grandiose claims about death rays and earthquake machines without any evidence, he had become a caricature of the mad scientist. People didn't take him seriously anymore. When he needed funding most desperately, in his final decades, no one would invest because he seemed unstable, unreliable, untrustworthy. And fifth, Tesla valued recognition over money, but the world gave him neither. He spent decades fighting for patent priority over Marconi, spending time and resources on legal battles instead of on developing new commercial products. He cared desperately about being recognized as the true inventor, about getting credit for his contributions. But he didn't get that recognition during his lifetime, and his obsession with it distracted him from more practical concerns like actually making money. If he had spent the energy he devoted to fighting Marconi on developing practical commercial applications of his patents, he might have died wealthy, but he didn't care about wealth. He cared about recognition, and he got neither. So what are we supposed to learn from this? What's the lesson of Tesla's life? I think there are several. First, intellectual capital is insufficient without financial acumen. Being the smartest person in the room means nothing if you can't negotiate a fair deal, can't manage investors, can't translate your intelligence into financial security. Tesla possessed extraordinary technical knowledge and revolutionary inventive capacity, yet he demonstrated persistent and ultimately catastrophic incompetence in financial negotiations, business management, and investor relations. If you're going to change the world with your inventions, you need to either develop business skills or partner with someone who has them. Tesla had neither. Second, grand vision without incremental verification will fail. Tesla's most ambitious projects, particularly Wardenclyffe, failed because he conceived them as all-or-nothing, end-state solutions to massive problems rather than building incrementally toward demonstrable milestones. Rather than building a prototype wireless transmission system that would demonstrate feasibility and secure additional funding based on proven progress, Tesla demanded complete funding up front for a massive tower based entirely on theoretical predictions. When that funding proved insufficient and results disappointed, he couldn't fall back on partial achievements, demonstrate interim success, or pivot to more modest intermediate goals. Modern venture capital and business practice emphasize iterative development, minimum viable products, and demonstrable milestones. Tesla violated all of these principles. Third, mental health affects professional credibility and access to resources. Tesla's OCD, germophobia, and increasingly eccentric behaviors damaged his professional relationships and credibility, particularly in his later years. While Tesla's OCD did not diminish his technical brilliance, it contributed to interpersonal friction, social isolation, and ultimately reputational damage that prevented him from securing the resources his later projects required. An entrepreneur's psychological stability is not separate from their business performance. It directly affects their ability to attract investment, maintain partnerships, and execute long-term projects. And fourth, innovation must be coupled with aggressive commercialization and legal defense. Tesla's invention of radio was legally validated only posthumously, decades after Marconi's practical dominance had made Tesla's contribution seem historically secondary. Tesla's delay in commercializing his wireless systems and his failure to aggressively defend his patents through litigation and public demonstration allowed Marconi to capture the market narrative and reap substantial financial rewards. Earlier, more forceful defense of intellectual property through litigation, product commercialization, and public demonstration could have altered Tesla's financial trajectory entirely. But beyond these business lessons, there's a deeper, more human tragedy in Tesla's story. Tesla deliberately chose isolation. He chose to avoid romantic relationships, marriage, and family. He famously said, "I do not think there is any thrill that can go through the human heart like that felt by the inventor as he sees some creation of the brain unfolding to success. Such emotions make a man forget food, sleep, friends, love, everything." He believed that absolute dedication to invention required sacrificing human connection. He believed that love and relationships would interfere with his work, and for decades that choice seemed justified. Look at what he accomplished. He powered the modern world. He revolutionized electrical engineering. He laid the foundations for wireless communication. His inventions literally changed civilization. But what was the cost? He died alone in a hotel room, emotionally attached to pigeons because he had no human beings in his life. He had no wife, no children, no close friends in his final decades. The man who gave the world the gift of electrical power received no emotional warmth in return. The man who illuminated cities died in darkness. There's a quote from Tesla that haunts me. He said, "Be alone, that is the secret of invention. Be alone, that is when ideas are born." And he was right. Solitude did help him invent. His isolation did contribute to his genius, but it also destroyed him as a human being. By the end, he had nothing except his inventions, and his inventions had given him nothing except a legacy he would never live to fully appreciate. So let me ask you a question. Was Tesla's life a success or a failure? On one hand, he changed the world. Every time you flip a light switch, Tesla is there. Every electric motor, every power grid, every piece of electrical infrastructure in modern civilization exists because of his inventions. His impact on human civilization is almost immeasurable. Billions of people have lived better lives because of what he created. On the other hand, he died broke, alone, and largely unrecognized. He spent his final decades in poverty and isolation, emotionally attached to pigeons, making grandiose claims about weapons he couldn't demonstrate, slowly losing his mind while the world forgot about him. He never experienced the recognition he desperately wanted. He never enjoyed the wealth his inventions generated for others. He never had love, family, or human connection. So which is it? Success or failure? I think the answer is both. Tesla succeeded at changing the world but failed at living in it. He succeeded at invention but failed at business. He succeeded at technical innovation but failed at human connection. He won the war but lost his life. And maybe that's the real lesson of Tesla's story. Maybe the lesson is that genius alone isn't enough. Maybe the lesson is that changing the world isn't enough if you destroy yourself in the process. Maybe the lesson is that we need to value not just what someone accomplishes, but how they accomplish it and what it costs them personally. Tesla once said, "The present is theirs. The future for which I really worked is mine." And he was right. The future was his. We're living in Tesla's world. Every electrical device you use, every motor, every power grid, it's all built on his inventions. He won. History vindicated him. The Supreme Court affirmed his priority. Modern engineers recognize him as one of the greatest inventors who ever lived. The future was his, but he never lived to see it. And that's the tragedy. He was right, but he was right too late for it to matter to him personally. So every time you turn on a light, every time you use an electrical device, every time you benefit from the modern electrical infrastructure that powers our entire civilization, remember Nikola Tesla. Remember the man who gave us all of this and received almost nothing in return. Remember the genius who died broke. Remember the visionary who lived too far ahead of his time. Remember the man who loved a pigeon because he had driven away every human who might have loved him. Remember the inventor who changed the world but couldn't change his own fate. Tesla's final words, or at least the sentiment that defined his final years, might be summarized in something he once wrote. "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose to my life." That's what it came down to in the end. Not the AC motor, not the Tesla coil, not the wireless transmission systems, not the patents or the inventions or the contributions to civilization. In the end, what gave his life purpose was a pigeon. And when that pigeon died, so did he, at least emotionally. He lived for 21 more years, but he was already gone. That's the story of Nikola Tesla, the genius who powered the world and died in darkness, the visionary who saw the future but never lived to enjoy it, the inventor who changed everything and gained nothing, the man who won the war but lost his life. His inventions are immortal, his legacy is secure, his contributions to civilization are immeasurable, but the man himself died alone, broke and broken. And maybe that's the price of genius. Maybe that's what it costs to change the world. Or maybe, just maybe, it didn't have to be that way. Maybe Tesla could have had both. Maybe he could have changed the world and lived to enjoy it. Maybe he could have been a genius and also been happy. But he made choices, and those choices led him to room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker, January 7, 1943, dying alone with pigeons as his only companions. That's Nikola Tesla. Remember his name, remember his inventions, remember his genius, but also remember his tragedy, because both are equally important, both are equally true, and both are equally part of who he was and what he gave us. The lights are on because of him, but he died in the dark. Never forget that. Never forget either part of that truth. Please like the video and subscribe for more.